Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Scott, microphone. So
I got that out of the way.
Yeah. We had to have it at least once, right?
That's right. Now it's done for the show. I took the bullet.
You're welcome. Right.
Now no one else has to do it.
So let's get stuck in. We've got a good stream today. Lots of information to discuss. I'm very excited for this one. So first of all, let's go through who we are and what we're about. So let's go through the slides.
We are not Kevin Moore.
No, but he's going to join us. So my name is Simon Leifer. I'm a Flutter community lead. I also work at Dev Angels London as the CTO and lead engineer. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
My name is Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader. I've been with Flutter for about 3 years. I am a freelance developer, basically gun for hire. And I'm also organizer of GDG Cleveland. And Majiti Jan, hopefully will be with us a little bit later. He has this thing called a job and another thing called a family. I know a lot of us don't know anything about these, but it kind of can prevent him from being here at times.
And we're also going to be joined later on with Kevin Moore, which we'll introduce him then, and he's a Flutter team member. And we're also going to be joined by lots of other Flutter community members. Scott, do's and don'ts.
Do's and don'ts. Don't be an idiot. Let's work on the do's. Be decent to people. Once again, be excellent to each other. Sooner or later, we're going to get sued over that. Be respectful, constructive on YouTube comments and YouTube chat. I know that's one day it might happen. Yeah, on YouTube especially. Don't post anything that's adult content, rude, offensive statements. We're not here to be your advertising place. Don't spam. This is a really one that actually does happen a lot. Don't keep posting the same question over and over and over and over again just because we haven't gotten to it yet. There's a lot going on. And if I see the same question 5 or 6 times, we're really going to ignore it.
And we do try to get into every question as we can. And the floor will be open later to all sorts of, I think that's it for the slides today.
Yeah. Well, don't harass anybody.
Right. Be nice.
We will kick you out of the Flutter community Slack and the Disc. And we'll have some nice folks who will kick you out of the Discord and everywhere else.
So today we have Kevin Moore on with us in a bit. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. Humpday Q&A hashtag. And if you don't get to them today, feel free to post them on Twitter and all the other Flutter community sites. So we'll bring up if you're just to let everyone know, flutter.dev/community, you can get to Discord and the Slacks and all the ways of communicating with us and everyone else.
One other thing real quick, Simon. We're asking them if they have questions, but what kind of questions are good for Kevin? I know he's worked on null safety.
Good point.
And he's also working on using Dart with Cloud Functions.
Yes,
we're going to go over that. What else is good for Kevin?
To be honest, Kevin, I believe he's product owner, manager for Dart, right, at the moment. I think, or did he change his role? I can't remember. It might be engineering product manager. We'll ask him in a minute. The point here is that Dart, anything related to
his
Dart
LinkedIn
and everything like that. So there's, for example, I really want to point one thing out to him about JSON serializable that irks me, that I think he's going to be embarrassed about. But the fact of the matter is, there's so much to discuss. So let's actually talk about that. We have a few Flutter community members here we can start chatting with. So Mariano, are you with us?
I'm receiving a signal. Kevin's a product manager.
Product manager. Right, there you go.
Where did you get that info? Such a mind reader.
It's in that chat right there.
And how embarrassing. And I'm going to pronounce your name completely wrong. So I can't roll my
arse.
There we go. Yeah, don't worry, man. I told you, you can tell me Argyle. It's okay. It's not the first time that someone's gonna change my name, so I'm used to it. Don't worry. Hello.
We'll call you Archangel. That's another one, right?
Dark Angel, yeah.
One of our regulars.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
Me?
There we go.
Hey. I was going to say welcome back.
How could it be a stream without Randall?
Welcome back to y'all, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Y'all very American. Very American.
Very American. I am very American. Yes.
So I mean, how is everyone doing recently? Let's have a quick catch. How is everyone doing recently? I mean, we've had quite a few weeks to recover from Flutter Engage. There's been lots of discussions online, I'm sure. Have you guys been up to much over the past couple of weeks?
I have been like listening some people at least in the Flutter community that says I have no idea where's no safety. I don't know why I need it. I maybe we're gonna say like what? I mean, we have been doing lives and videos and whatever for the last month, and you're saying that is like you need to get into. It's not like something you are not going to do. You would have to do it. So please don't do that. Get related is something good. It's good for you. It's good for your code. And start helping community that know every single one of the people can migrate their a lot of packages. People have a lot of packages, so help community. I mean,
to be honest, talking about migration, right? Null safety, right? Like, I've seen the progress. We've been seeing so much speed of the amount of packages. I mean, I know I personally did mine last weekend. Yeah. I've been meaning to do it for a while. So
Flutter Fix has done a lot, and honestly, what I've found is anything medium size or smaller, it's not that big a deal. You catch on really quickly where to put the exclamation points. Wow.
And the question marks.
The question marks they're pretty obvious.
Yes.
The exclamation points will often come right after a square bracket and before the period.
The thing is,
place to try it.
You should never be using exclamation points. That's normally a rule for null safety. It's like
there is definitely points. There is definitely points where you should use it, but in general, you don't want to be putting.
You should avoid them
because your type should be nullable in the first place. That's the point, right?
Yeah, you're breaking the whole logic of it.
What's scaring me is I'm seeing a lot of people in. Now I patrol like the word patrol now, so I'm using it. I patrol about 9 different social media areas these days. I just added Discord. Oh, there's a flood more questions over there now too, so it's like crazy.
Don't do it.
What I'm seeing, I'm sorry. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to answering stuff for y'all. I'm addicted to answering stuff. No, here's what I'm seeing is a dangerous trend of people upgrading to Flutter 2 and then announcing hours later they're downgrading again. And I really want to get at the heart of what's happening there. What are they doing? Are they updating their pub spec without updating the rest of their code? Are they not using the Dart fix thing? Or what is it that's happening to all these people?
I did see there was. I mean, they actually have done 2 hotfix releases so far.
Okay.
Like 2.0.3 now. I think there's like 2 or 3 hotfix releases where they've identified some critical things that have to be fixed. And I think that's a few reasons why people downgraded. Like they found that this thing broke and they fixed it and they released the hotfix.
So if you tried it before and rolled back, try it again.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's. I'm a little bit bewildered. If you're seeing that your app is bleeding everywhere, that's what the migration and null safety is about. You know, if you look in the side of your IDE and it's just running blood, that's what we're talking about.
And like the Dart team said, they found some errors in their code because they ran it through migrate and it said, "Oh, this can be null," and they had no idea it could be null.
I totally found the same thing every single time that I've run the migration. So I found there's a little niggling thing. I'm like, I didn't think of that. So,
right.
Yeah. It makes your code better. It makes your code faster. It makes your code safer. You don't run into NPEs. It's worth the time to fix the red squigglies.
One of the things that I have kind of love about the new null safety stuff, is the late word, the keyword. I don't know why I haven't enjoyed that that much.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
some people say like, no, I don't need it. But I know in some places that it's really important to use it. So can define something final, say late, final, and using where you need it, and that's it. I mean, it's
Basically,
pretty important for me.
every single stateful widget, because I personally have this thing about initializing all of my variables in a stateful widget in the init state.
Yeah.
Color me silly, but if you do that, then when you declare them, you have to declare them late final.
Yeah.
Because you're not initializing until later. So yeah, I've got late all over. So in all your stateful widgets, it's great.
And as a choice, if you think, oh, I have to make this a nullable type because I won't get around to initializing this later, please don't. Choose late rather than a nullable type. Always.
Yep.
There is actually something I kind of want to explain to people. I don't think a lot of people know. When you put the exclamation mark in, right, you're basically saying force a null check at this point.
Yep.
Right.
It's a force and grab.
Yeah, it's a force and wrap. But the point here is that when it tries to convert it to non-null, that's when it does the check. So every time you put an exclamation mark, you're adding a check. But by default, it's non-null. Therefore, it can never be null.
Doesn't need it. Yeah.
An exclamation mark puts us all the way back into 2020. Please don't.
Right.
We hated 2020.
I do. So there are reasons to use it, though, right? But the point is just you should not be putting question marks after. Basically, here's the thing: if you were to take all of your current types, put question marks after the type names of every type in your entire app, and put exclamation marks at every place, you just convert your app to what it was before null safety.
Yes.
That's the right?
Also, I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Stack Overflow. People wanting to use that variable on the build method, but the late init is in the init state, and the build happened before the init state sometimes, and they try to use it. They didn't create fully with a feature, so someone was using a feature on a late init and explode the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's you're breaking the whole thing.
So that's something to think about. I'll probably pull this up with Kevin later. There's been a few instances where I think I don't know enough of the semantics around late, to be honest. I understand the use of it, but not necessarily in the semantics, because I think when you set something as late, it's only when you first access the variable that it initializes it, I believe.
What you're doing is you're letting them know the IDE that, or like actually Flutter and Dart, that you're going to use that, and by the moment that you're going to use it, it's not going to be null anymore because you already constructed before it was being used. If you try to use it before it was constructed, it's going to explode because
it's basically it's going to let you have it null when you declare it, but only because you're making a promise that you're going to instantiate it before you use it.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing. Can I just say something? You can declare a variable as late, but also give it the initializer in line. So not in a function. So put it this way. Imagine this one, Scott. At the top of your state class, you can say late final A equals.
You mean like a lazy initialization?
And that becomes a lazy initializer. And at that point,
okay, but when would you use that? A future?
No, there's plenty of reasons to use it. No, what I'm saying is, it's when you access the variable, at that point, it initializes it calls the right-hand side of the equation and then initializes the variable.
Which also means it doesn't have to be a constant and not refer to other elements of the same
No, it doesn't need that. That's the thing, right? So,
it doesn't. It doesn't have to, right.
Yeah. So the same problem we have, right? When you have a const, right, you can still have a constant class with late initializers because those are run at runtime, not at compile time.
Yep.
Right.
Which is very powerful. I mean, because we've always had that problem where if you wanted to find a const, everything inside it has to be const, and everything inside that has to be const, right?
Yep.
Which kind of takes you one step back out of that, right? So that you can then sort of peel off almost layers of data onto your structures that are not constant but defined within constants. So it's a bit of a new.
You also forget about doing it in the constructor, so you don't have like a giant constructor full of stuff with late initializations, or doing it later if you miss it. You just it's going to be take care of. Once you use it, the lace is going to kick in. It's going to activate that late init, and you're good to go. So
it's once I understand this better, I will be doing a screencast on it. So bear with me as I still sort through all the issues, understand the whole thing. I came up with what I thought was a great way of initializing singletons. And then I talked to Simon for 20 minutes, and he totally blew me out of the water again about what I think I know versus what I actually know. So as soon as I get confident that I know something that all y'all, so I even use the big one, that can make use of, I will be doing another screencast. Subscribe to my channel.
Yeah.
It's Android and Kotlin, you should be good to go with null safety. It's lazy and late init and all that stuff. Same thing.
Okay. I was going to say, number one, I apologize for the sound of birds. It's kind of necessary.
In general?
It's the
nature.
Yes. Hey, one of these days I will do the stream from out by a waterfall where some of these guys have seen. I like to go and work there. But one of the funny things is there's a friend of ours, Noah Seidman, and he does an incredible podcast about cryptocurrency. If you look him up on YouTube, if you're into that. But Noah, one day when Simon was not around, told me that Simon had paid me a tremendous compliment. And that was a couple years ago. It was the day that he stopped looking at my code and saying, that's wrong, and started saying, you're not wrong, but. And then he refactors everything to the point where you can't even read your own code anymore. Okay. And I said, yeah, I want to get to the point where I can read it when he's done. And Noah looked at me, and Noah was the lead Android. He was in charge of the Android team for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. Okay. This guy has worked on big stuff. And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? I can't read my code when Simon's done with it. That's you're never going to get there.
But it's nice to say that, right? But there is a point at which that it doesn't matter what your code shape is, right? It should be documented, right? So if you can't understand it, then that's a problem, right? So I just want to be clear, you don't just leave everyone with, oh my god, I don't understand it, right? No, there should be some.
That would require comments, Simon. Shall we talk about that offline?
Yes, you can comment my code for me. Thanks.
Somebody has to.
Couples therapy after.
So I had this with this app that took 3 months to arrive here.
Right, you're right, yeah. Rich, right? Should we mention the Patreon? We should mention that we have a Patreon.
Yeah, I mean that's maybe you're the best to say about Patreon and stuff, but yeah, I was doing helping community with Patreon and stuff, and I decided because I want this app, so I started doing that. And it happens for a while, a couple months, maybe another month. And then a little box arrived to my house, and it was like this cup. And they say, oh, okay, thank you guys. And it's pretty cool. It's huge. I can have like a liter of coffee in it and stuff. And they told me, we sent that 3 months ago. Well, like 3 months ago? I mean, I just received it in the morning. I don't know, maybe April.
I don't know what to tell you, man. I was on the other end of those messages, so I'm glad you got it.
That's what I'm saying. If you can and you're willing, you can also help Patreon. I don't know how to say it in English, so I said Patreon. If community have one, and you can help. Yeah, Patreon. In Spanish also.
Just one other thing about that to let you all know, if you've been one of our patrons, to let you know part of what's been going on here. The Flutteristas did not have all of the proper domain names to go with their group. So this morning I broke out the Magic Flutter Community credit card and bought up the Flutterista domain names. So they will be able to have that now. But that's, and we've also done other things. There is the London App Brewery Flutter Boot Camp. It's an excellent course. We gave away, goodness, how many of those did we give away?
A lot.
A lot. I think it was 30 or 40 of them. We got some help from the Flutter team with that one as well. But we're trying to look at doing a lot more too, and a lot more events. I'm having another one of those moments.
I think we'll have a Kevin here shortly, and I think if you don't mind, guys, I think we'll bring Kevin on, and we'll have you guys back in a minute. Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
We'll continue this discussion at the end. So I hear Kevin in my ear. Kevin.
Hello.
Welcome. Nice.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Let me check the audio here.
You sound good?
It's like, my headset has a microphone,
strong.
but I want to use this microphone, and it's all a little nuts.
This is how every meeting has gone for me for the past year. Everyone checking their microphones. Can you see?
Including the 6 meetings this morning.
Right, exactly. I think, do you know what I read about? That there's this whole new thing called, what was it called? Zoom fatigue, where people are just fatigued from having too many online conversations. So sorry for adding another one to your plate. But
I'm in meetings a lot of the day. Too. It's actually funny because I have, the 3 kids. I have the baby who's not in Zoom much, talking to grandma and grandpa, and abuela. I should talk to your Latin American friends there too. But there are seriously times where there are 4 of the 5 people in this house are on, Zoom, Hangouts, FaceTime. There's not Hangouts anymore. Google Meet. It's bonkers. I'm glad we have fiber.
I was going to say, that's the thing that I've seen everyone doing, upgrading their internet connections, because now suddenly they need the internet because it's their way of connecting with the world. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Give me a second. You're going to open my window so I can, because it's getting a little warm in here with the door closed.
No problem.
So
did you
we
hear
just talk about it?
Yeah, I was going to say. So did you hear any of our discussion just now? I think
I did. It was entertaining.
It was entertaining.
I actually don't. Are you sure you
totally
can do,
wrong, but at least it was funny.
Yeah, I was like, it was like this thing. Like, when can Kevin give up the baby so he can come talk? I'm going to dartpad.dev right now. I don't think you cannot add a final late to a const. I don't believe
no, not to a const. No. I think we were talking about the fact that to a const. I'll see what you're saying. So if you've got a const defined object, you can have a final late.
I was going to bring that up because it's like
I'm pretty sure I did that, and if I'm wrong, then great, I'm wrong.
Okay, but if you're going to initialize it late while your app is running, then that kind of defeats the purpose of it being const at compile time.
Yeah, you cannot have. You cannot have. Because there's like, think about this. The compiler generates the const before it comes across it is. Yeah. If you look at the JavaScript, it exists fully realized in the code before it runs. And so if I did late final, I can't. It has to everything has to come through the constructor.
Yeah.
Or be or initialized as constant literals in the constructor. It's crazy. But late is one of those things where, even forget null safety, just adding late to the language is awesome. Because now you can do things like, I can hold on to my parent with a final variable. I couldn't do that before. But now you can.
Wait, what? Please explain.
Elaborate.
Taking notes.
I made random GUI. There's times where you want to hold on to your parents, and so the example I can think of
is a hierarchy kind of relationship.
Yeah, I did some random retained graphics thing. Gosh, one of the first things I wrote in Dart was my own retained graphics UI layer, and there's a thing where you want the UI element to hold onto its parent.
Define that, please. Not everyone's going to understand what you mean by hold on to its parent.
Oh yes, this is good. Bring me down to earth.
Or at least down the noob.
So the case where I have some, or a doubly linked list maybe. Actually, that's a bad example because I'm going to mutate those. I have some class parent and I want to new up some class child, and I want to pass this to the child object. So the child has a pointer to me, the parent. The child has a pointer. I want to pass a pointer of myself to my child. You could never put that in a final before because this was not available.
Mm-hmm. Right.
In this is not available in the constructor.
It's the catch-22, right? One object is not constructed before the other one, and therefore you've
right. Yeah. But now you can do late final child equals child this, and that variable is now final, which makes us all very happy because we don't want that to be nullable. Like I always have a child. The child's always there. There's no case where
am I misunderstanding this? But you're talking about instantiating a child and then allowing that child to have a reference to its parent, so it now has information about its parent.
Yeah. Is there a way for me to share screen here?
Yes, you can.
Well, what I'm thinking, Kevin, is what's going to happen now is the child's going to have the ability to know what size the parent is without having to do a layout builder.
No. I mean, because that's more about. I mean, I see your point there, Scott, but that's more about.
Well, forget about the UI example because that gets crazier. Okay. Just think of, in general, a case where I have.
If you want to share your screen, you should be able to do that.
Let me. Okay, let's see here.
If you open up a tab, you should be able to do share tab.
I'll do that. Share
screen.
Share
browser. You can share browser tab if you're concerned.
Oh, I have to share. Okay, I have to share a whole screen. Just a second. This is the most exciting thing you guys have ever done. Let me go in and. This is some music. We need a drum roll. Let's watch the product.
Don't say that to Nilay. Okay, Nilay is
manage his windows. Right. Here we go. Share.
There's a way to just share a tab. I don't know. When you press share screen, you can say just Chrome tab.
Oh, I can do a Chrome tab
an application.
Here. I can share a Chrome tab. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Chrome. So you guys can see my. There we go.
Yes, we can. We can see your lovely screen.
Okay. Now I need to.
I always use Bob as my random.
Well, it's a bit better than Foobar, right? Because that.
Yes.
Fizzbuzz.
So yeah. So I can go late final. I can't do that, but I can do. Is they gonna let me do that? No way. If this doesn't end up working, I'm gonna be very sad because.
This is where you find out Dartpad. Are you using the null safe version of Dartpad?
Kevin, is there a way to make that larger since it's, yep. Okay. Never mind.
There we go. Wait. Oh, wait. This should be fine.
Yeah. Parent and Bob are two different names. That's why it's a companion.
Oh, there you go. There we go. So, okay. Let me turn off null safety. Here to this. You couldn't do this before. Right? Clearly, it yells at you. But now I can do late final, turn on null safety, and there you go. Because really what you would do before, and that's what's unfortunate, is you'd end up doing, child. You'd end up doing this, and then put your child instantiation in here, and then, but in null safety, you'd have to make child null. And
the big thing for me, the reason why I really like late is that whole problem is just about initialization. You want something to be final, but you don't want the initialization to be in the initializer, not you had to be in the constructor before, right? So you kind of get that situation previously where you would have to end up doing a variable, a private member variable, and then a getter to make something read-only, but it's still not really final, right? You can still reassign it at runtime if you are not careful.
Right. So the important thing here to keep in mind is that, make sure I get this right. In this case, this late final, because I use this syntax, will not have a setter. You think of like DartDoc, right? It won't have a setter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do this is really, I'm sorry for your beginners on this because this is a little bit inside baseball.
I see what you're doing here. That has a setter. It calls the setter. Yeah.
So will that work? Let's see. This should work. Yeah. So now, yes. So now, actually, let me go here. So void main. Oops. You guys, I won't bore the people too much, but the docs. This will actually have a setter now, and so people just need to be careful. Even if you set it right away, and if it's late final, that means you can't assign it again. But in the docs and at dev time, it'll have a setter. And so
does that mean And if you call that setup because it's already been initialized, you get there's that new error. Is it late initializer? Like, because you get an error if you try and access a getter of a late before it's been initialized, which is like lazy instantiation error or something like that. You get like late. I forget the name.
Something like that. I don't have them memorized either. But
I know it's too early for me to get them memorized. I spent 3 years memorizing what they were previously. It doesn't come up when I type in late, so. I know, it's gone now.
You made Kevin go away. No, Kevin made Kevin go away.
We've lost a Kevin. He closed his browser probably. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. It happens.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's a better one than me on mute.
There he is. He's back. Did you close the browser?
Like, the red button that stops screen sharing, is a little bit different than the red button.
It's all right.
When I'm putting together apps,
sorry.
When I'm putting together apps and I haven't finalized the UI yet because I'm working on the logic first, sometimes just for fun, you put the big red button there.
Right.
So it's like, don't do this. No, you actually have to do that to test it.
So yeah, I don't know the level of the technical stuff here. That's very kind of inside baseball for people that are new to null safety. It's been a great thing to do. It's when we were in the middle of development, I started migrating some code a little bit, kind of experimentally. But obviously, we need to kind of work from the ground up. That's actually a lot of the work I've been doing over the last several months. Is just all the work to kind of how do you organize the ecosystem. And I played with GraphViz. I don't know if anyone's played with GraphViz before.
Oh, yeah.
There's a great, I don't think it's even compiled to WASM yet. I think it's still kind of ASM.js is the thing I use, but it's old school. And I just haven't found anything I haven't had the time to find something newer, but it works in a browser and that's all I care. So I wrote all this crazy wrapper around it. So basically I could do the graph it started with just the Dart packages, and then Flutter packages, and then a bunch of important ecosystem packages.
And basically, this would be lovely to have as a poster for everyone.
I should show. You know what? I should show the screen. I don't want to get.
Do you really want to chance that again?
Maybe later we can get into it. If we have time at the end, I can show you.
I want to bring something up that I keep getting questions about. And this is just me nitpicking. This was something to talk about as well.
Okay.
Do you know? We all know this package, right?
Yes.
So first of all, thank you very much because I think you've been one of the main people behind this. So I think everyone am I right? And tell me if I'm wrong, please.
There are I get credit for a lot of stuff just because I've uploaded things. I think I can safely say I have written the vast majority of code and things in JSON serializable. And what's funny is, the history is insane. JSON serializable used to be part of SourceGen.
Interesting.
And SourceGen is the OG build tool. But it was my crazy thing. Like it used to have hooks. SourceGen, if you look at the source code for SourceGen, it's so old. If you go all the way back, the first incarnations actually. It was based on having a build.dart file in the root of your package because the old not in Emacs, IntelliJ. What's the Java IDE that IBM did?
Eclipse.
No, Eclipse. No. We had way back. This is 7 years ago. So ancient history.
This is when Dart first started. You're talking about. Wow.
There was the Dart editor based on Eclipse, and that had a crazy logic where when you saved code, it would if there was I think it was build.dart in the root. It would call it. So I wrote it. You'd wire up a build.dart file, and then it would generate JSON. And the insane thing is, we got real engineers. Nate and Jake are the main ones. We got real engineers involved. They stripped out a bunch of that, and that became the build system. And obviously, I was only inspiration. That whole thing is just completely amazing what the build system does. And then at some point, Nate's like, we should really just get this JSON stuff out of SourceGen, because it doesn't belong there anymore. And so then, but if you go back far enough, JSON serializable used to be in SourceGen, which goes all the way back to Eclipse-based Dart editor.
We don't talk about the Eclipse days. That's memories we'd like to forget here.
Well, let's talk about XML. Let's talk about XML and
it's
SOAP.
still out there, actually.
So yes, so I did notice, and I just wanted to sort of put people's mind at rest. This doesn't have null safety, but it doesn't need to, right? Because this is the builder. It's the annotation class which you include inside of your code, which has the null safety. Am I right in thinking that?
You're absolutely right. And this is, people have been complaining to me, and it was frustrating, and it still is frustrating. And actually, I just closed an issue on this. And it's just hard because we want our messaging to be simple, which means we can't necessarily always be completely accurate, because then people are just confused. The minutia is always hard. So right now, build runner, when you run builds, does not run null safe. It doesn't. If you actually go look at the generated build.dart, if you go under Dart tool, build, entry point, build, there's actually a comment in there, //Dart equals 2.9. So it doesn't run null safe yet because we don't have everything migrated yet. And that's fine. Null safety is great, especially for deploying your Flutter app or whatever app you're building. But Dart 2.12 and Flutter 2, you don't have to use null safety. You can set an SDK constraint that is 2.9, 2.10, and null safety won't get turned on, and that is totally fine. Go ahead, sorry.
No, say it's the unsound null safety page actually explains a bit more about adding the comment at the top of your file. Yeah. Running mixed versions. Yeah. I'll bring it up on screen for everyone just so we know what we're talking about here. There's this is what you're talking about, the comment at the bottom of the screen, right?
Yeah. So, and this, there's a whole, we should bring Leaf on or Bob at some point because they really understand this well. But this is actually kind of cool too, because that means as we add a language feature, you don't have to opt into it at each library. In theory, the package or each library can decide to opt into that feature or not. And so it wasn't a breaking change. And that was one of the big things we pushed through, because honestly, there are still lots of people at Google who still have the scars and PTSD. I shouldn't joke about that too much because there are legitimately people with PTSD. But stress. Well, poor Google engineers with their free lattes that have. But there are still people that have not so fond memories. Like the sound transition in Dart 2 was a lot of work for folks and took a lot of time. And so we didn't want to say, oh no, everything in the world. So even still things at Google right now, not everything is null safe yet, and that's totally fine. We're working on it, and we're working from the bottom.
The move from for those of you who are fairly new to Flutter, I hate to sound like the old fart who says you've got it easy. You weren't here for the change from Dart 1 to Dart 2.
Or
ouch.
Or Android X, right?
Yeah.
That migration was a pain as well.
And don't get me wrong, it was worth it. It was an important change. It was the change from 1 to 2 is something we needed, but the actual mechanics of getting changed over were for what, Kevin, 4 to 6 weeks. Pretty brutal.
So it was, oh my gosh, we were, it's so funny is I had all these other crazy tools that I created for the Dart 2 migration for the same thing. Like, are these packages migrated yet? And I basically rehydrated all of it and, made a V2 of all that stuff to handle null safety. So actually I had a bunch of the infrastructure in place.
All right.
Like, are all our packages running on CI in the latest version? Are all the transitive dependencies migrated? Like, because we know it's a power law. Like there are packages like path and async and convert and provider and all those that have it's disproportionate. Like if you migrate this much of the Flutter ecosystem, handwrite this much, you unblock this much. Wait, look at my hand. You unblock a lot. And so we were really focused on, we don't have to migrate half the ecosystem. We need to migrate the important, 200 packages. And then there'll always be laggards, but that gets most people unblocked. And so that was really what I've been focused on.
I'll get this off the screen. Jason serializable. So I think it's worth maybe updating the README just to say, it builds null safe code now, right? Because
look at the changelog.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It's right. But I feel like people just don't go that extra mile. And this is where I go. This is where the only place that I can find in the documentation, Flutter pub run build runner build, right? It's not in the README. And this is what every beginner tells me. They go, we say use JSON serializable, and immediately they go, well, it doesn't work. And when no, you have to run this command, and there's nowhere in here that states that. I'm just saying that
file an issue for me.
I will even do the fix and file it for you if you want.
Send me a pull request. That's even better. Oh my lord,
exactly,
send me a pull request.
You just tick it and go, yeah, done. But I do want to mention this, and this is something that a lot of people miss. You can actually add a build YAML and then add your defaults as well, which is something that a lot of people I feel don't do. They then go change the default for like explicit to JSON on every JSON serializable annotation, and that kind of defeats the purpose of getting rid of boilerplate. So yeah, no, I do like that a lot.
And just again, some insight things, but this is completely bananas. This just like silly dev tricks, I guess. So there's JSON serializable the package, and then there's JSON serializable the class, which is defined in JSON annotation, just to give everyone a headache. So the class JSON serializable is JSON serializable.
No. Okay.
Of course it is. So wait, hold on. I gave a talk about this. I did like a live stream this summer. Oh wait, gets fun. If you don't know about this, Simon, I'm going to blow your mind now. So do you know why any map and checked exist?
You're talking about these two here, these ones here, yeah.
Do you know why they exist?
I don't remember.
So the YAML package from Dart is not map of string to dynamic. It's map of something interesting to dynamic. So go back to the bottom there. Scroll down.
Sorry, to the bottom of to
the YAML.
Yeah.
So there's a package called checked YAML that I wrote. And if you set up things correctly, this is actually used. Oh my gosh, the little holes we could go into for hours here. How long is this thing? We're good till 1 o'clock. There's so many things. I should probably check to see if I have a meeting.
When's your next? I was going to say, when's your next meeting?
We will find time in the stream. I'm sure there's lots of people that want to hear about all of that.
There's a live stream thing I did this summer that goes into this more detail. But basically, what I do is if you use any map and checked, and this package called checked YAML, you can now parse YAML with JSON serializable. And if you do your things right, like you have good argument exceptions and other things in terms of how it works, it will generate beautiful errors for you. It'll say, oh, at this line and this offset into your YAML, you are wrong because you missed a key, or this key is the wrong type, or whatever else.
I see. It's checking the two are compatible, and you've done the right thing. I mean,
right. And all it's doing is calling the constructors here. But what it does is because our YAML package has, and this is awesome job, Natalie, uses source span, and so it knows the source location of all the elements in the YAML. You can actually create very good errors about, oh, you're missing an element here, or whatever else.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it'll give you beautiful errors. So
what's really nice from those errors, people, and this is what's happened with Dartpad, I just want to put this out, you get those lovely errors, and you can actually highlight an area of the screen that's incorrect, or even you get the stuff. If you get the offset of the row and column from an error message, you can really make a nice editor from that. So there's a essentially there's an Sorry.
So
go on.
no, and so the inside thing here is JSON serializable is JSON serializable. It uses this checked YAML thing, and the build system does it. And so actually, oh my gosh, people like this is what took so long. People are like, what's taking so long? So the core build packages use, and so there's another package called pubspec parse, which parses pubspecs. Surprise, surprise. That is based on checked YAML, because you want good errors if you can't parse it. Like, where's the offset where I forgot my key, or I put in a integer instead of a number. So JSON serializable, JSON annotation, checked YAML, pubspec parse parses pubspecs. Good name. Those are all used by build config and build to parse build.yaml files. And so I had to do this crazy circle where I had to bump the lower constraints in the build packages to support the latest version of JSON serializable, because I would try to build JSON serializable, and even this still happens. I have to do some weird finagling locally. Be glad you're not in this circle. Like I am in this circle.
The catch-22 of I know.
Because I will be in the middle of changing JSON serializable, and I can't run the build because I've changed the classes in a way that the classes in the build package need to run, and they're using my local package because I'm using dependency override, right? So I have it's bananas.
Big circle.
So I had to go through the whole circle of all the build packages, pubspec.parse, checked YAML, And yeah, just be glad you're out of that ring.
So
because outside of that ring, you're fine. But yeah.
Okay, so I want to highlight that we've had similar problems with the plus packages because we've had to deal with a lot of different packages all interrelated in some fashion and so on. And I want to highlight this out that it kind of solves that problem. Melos is what the Flutter Fire team have made in Invitae. I don't know if you've seen this project. It's called Melos.
I need to use it. We have
get hands on and use it. It is basically monorepo management. It sorts out that kind of interversion relationships between packages. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that, but yeah, I'm kind of you mentioned this earlier. Dart tool directory. Sorry, Scott. Wait a minute. There's a good point here.
Let's be careful too, because this is null safety and cloud functions are like this.
I was going to say. I mean, this whole is wonderful, but I'm not sure how much time we have, and a bunch of us are waiting to hear about what is this with serverless cloud functions and Dart, and what can I do in Flutter with it?
Do you want to share your screen and show
your screen?
Do you want the package that's being worked on?
Oh, you can show it. Let me think here. I guess I can do it too. I'm now nervous about sharing my screen for fear that I'm gonna.
Oh no, it's fine.
You don't have to be nervous about sharing it. Just when you stop sharing it, it's like falling is no big deal. It's when you stop that's the problem.
Well, this is actually it's fun. Okay, let me open up. Let me just open up all my things. But so I wanted to a few things. I'm glad people are having fun with null safety. It is great. Keep in mind some of the decisions we made while we're doing it. I heard you guys talking about putting exclamation points everywhere. Oh my gosh, that's a whole thing too, because there's two core things that come up a lot with me with putting exclamation points everywhere. And that should make you nervous, and it's great and honestly, we had those exclamation points were always there, right?
Yeah,
they were just virtual, and in our minds we put in a cert not null, or we should check this or not. And now that these things are kind of in paranoid developers' minds, they're there explicitly, which is a beautiful thing. But it's important to keep in mind that engineering is lots of trade-offs, which I don't need to preach to you guys. But we went hard. We're like, we want to make sure this is a non-breaking change. Like most users, if you don't change your pub spec, if you don't change your SDK constraint, if you upgrade to 2.12, it should just work, and there's no problems. And the reason is a bunch of decisions we made. For instance, the map. I call the indexer operator because I'm a C# guy, so I always call the indexer operator, but the square brackets operator that returns T of question mark. And that means you have to put bang after it everywhere. And exclamation point bang, I think bang again. I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah, that's fine.
The reason was, guess what? It is insanely common through a lot of code to do null checks effectively with indexer. They're like, oh, if map of foo equals null, then now really we should all be using contains, not contains, right? Because
that is one of the things, right? Like a lot of people need to remember this, that you look up an invalid key or a key that's non-existent in a map and you get null back, right? That's the de facto standard, right?
And you can imagine, what if we had get or something, right? A get method, and that did the right thing. Because that's the problem too, is what if I have a nullable T in my class? It might be nice to have, I'm going to call it a get function. I'm just making things up. But then I could use get, and get would throw if that key didn't exist, which it could be null. So right now, if I'm doing if I have a map that's nullable values, what if I get null back? The key might be there.
I'm just imagining the problems you guys have had migrating this code base.
And so keep in mind, we can't change the map class because people rely on it. We can't add members to map because that means any implementation of map also adds a member. So classes that generally are subclass frequently, even adding members, like, oh, this isn't breaking. Well, no, it is if people subclass it or implement it. So, we went around on this a lot, and very smart people, I think, made a very good choice, which is, we're going to return T of question mark from the map getter, the map indexer, square brackets. and someone's asking, what about map mixin? Well, that's the same problem because to do it efficiently, you could add, again, people are using map mixin or something, for instance. You still have the problem because not everyone uses map mixin to create a map.
There's also a base class, isn't there? I think base map. I can't remember.
Yeah, you could just use map, right, and do implement. So
and just
because
to back
we
up
wanted
a little
to not.
Bit, sorry. I'm sorry. It's just I always try and keep it balanced in my head because we have people coming from back end who aren't familiar with something like an aspect ratio, and we have people coming from like front end and web who don't know what a generic is. So when we're talking about T question mark, that basically means T can stand for any type. It could be a string. Yes. It could be an int. It could be anything. So when Kevin says T question mark, he's saying any type at all that is nullable.
Right. And we should be more clear when I talk about a generic type. So yes, T's kind of, we all assume it's either T or E, I guess, is the type. It's not just like it's object, meaning it stores anything. It means that I can define a class that's generic. And then when I instantiate the class, I can say, oh, I want a map of string to customer. And then all the things where I get strict customer types. But unfortunately, the map indexer, yeah.
I was going to say, I really find funny is when people use types in those situations, because you can put any identifier, right? Not just T, not just capital letter, but you could put the word hello, right? I mean,
no, I mean it has to be a type.
But when you do generic, right? When you declare your generic, you can give the generic
my
name.
T could be anything.
Yeah, but the problem I have is when I see a new type name being used, like hello or whatever, and then you see that and you're like, where is this type? It's not
right.
When it's one thing, I identify it as a template, right? As a template variable. A
single capital letter, like map uses K and V, which is great.
Right.
Kind of keys and variables.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why if I have two generics, I use S and T, and not instead of
there's
T and U. I don't know, but yeah.
Like S and D for source and destination. There's some reasons to having a certain letter. E for element, right?
Right.
Yeah. 3 words, guys. 3 words. Single letter variables.
Right. But this is
come on.
So anyway, the null safety stuff. I'm glad people are having fun. I need to do better docs in JSON serializable. Please send me a pull request. I'll be happy to take it. Keep in mind, you don't for the people in the community. You can still build your Flutter apps great, and they run great for the web, the desktop, everything else, and you don't have to have null safety enabled. So I'm not saying don't build null safety. What I'm saying is don't stress about it. And I really see a lot of people in the community like, I'm running it's pub upgrade or Flutter pub upgrade, -- major versions or -- null safety. And oh no, JSON serializable is not coming along. It's like, it's okay.
I wonder if I do. You can still, am I right? I just want to clarify this point then to people. They can upgrade their Dart version that they're running. So if let's say they upgrade to the latest version 2 of Flutter and it's compiling Dart 2.12, but they can set their Dart constraint to be less, and therefore their code doesn't have to be null safe.
Right. So your SDK constraint in your pub spec says, what version of the language am I opting into? And language versions introduce features. And so if you do not say my lower bound is 212, if you say my lower bound is 2.9 or 2.10 or whatever, that will that keeps you off null safety. There's some other weird things because in your package you could annotate classes as being null safe, but I don't think we should get into that. That's a little bit that gets a little bit more nuanced. We should do an after hours, like Friday night, late night Friday night thing. So like 3 a.m. for you, Simon, or something.
Good for that. On a Friday, I don't care.
And, it's funny. We were talking about that before. We wanted possibly to take a camera and do something like that at Interact, and thought that would be kind of fun. But we also have people now asking in YouTube. You mentioned the serverless cloud functions, and now people are like, "What?
Yeah, let's get to that. So there is a package, I believe, that's being worked on. I know Tony. Is it Tony? Is this one I'm thinking of? Yeah. So I bring this up on stream for anyone that's curious. I'm right in thinking it's this one.
It is freshly null safe for all those that Yes.
So tell us a bit more about the package and what this is all about.
Absolutely. So, you guys, if I say Eric Meyer, does that ring any bells for you guys? He was the guy who did generics in .NET at Microsoft. I actually overlapped with him at Microsoft. So he did all the generic work in .NET 3 or something. We actually brought him on, and he helped with generics in Dart, and helped us out a bunch, which was great. And I forget where, I think he's in Facebook now or something. He's always jumping around. And so he would always do these great jobs of kind of, talking about things in these abstract but concrete terms that map to everything. And so I'm channeling him a bit because the function framework. So humor me a second. If you think of a server is just a function. It might have some, not in the Haskell sense of function, right? Because it can have state, but it's still a function, right? You send some input and it gives you some output. And even if you're doing a routing, so you do routing in a function, a server, you return different.
Like shell, yeah.
Sure, but that's just function composition. I could have one function. I could have just a giant key statement that's my server that handles every possible URL that's sent to me. But you break it up. It's still just a function. So that's important to keep in mind, and actually gets into some more crazy stuff I'm thinking about with this whole builder thing later. So the function framework tries to do a very simple thing, which is, right now even defining a server in Dart is really straightforward, and I tried to make it with Shelf really easy. Like it really is just a function, but I have to do this boilerplate to set up my server.
So Hamid, you're behind Shelf as well. Let's tell everyone that.
Yes, I'm the OG. So actually, the funny thing is, before I discovered Dart, this is like 10 years ago, I was a Ruby person. I did a lot of Ruby on Rails.
We won't hold it
in Rack. No, it's good. I went through an evolution. I did .NET, and then I went all the way to the other side to Ruby on Rails, and then I found Dart, which is like, the beautiful thing in the middle.
Sweet spot.
I think so. So, yeah, so the reason it's called Shelf is because I was inspired by Rack. And so Rack, Shelf, now everyone knows.
Right.
So Shelf tries to be a functional definition of a server, which is you get a request, return a response. So there's a couple layers here. At the Google level for a function, and there's just general notion of functions in general. Like there's a whole cloud eventing spec that exists. So actually they're trying to do this and define it. It's not just a Google thing. It's a broader thing. And the idea is, let's define some rules of the road around what a function is. So like I'll talk about cloud events as a specific thing. And so in the world of a cloud event, the idea is I can send a server a well-formed request. And so that could either be content in headers, request headers, or content in a JSON body. It's binary encoding versus a different coding. And there can be a strong notion of what that is, and then a strong notion of like what the response type is. And so it's just narrowing the notion of what valid request response is. So that's one bit. So that's cloud events in a general eventing model. And the cloud function space at Google is the idea that let's get rid of all the boilerplate for any language. Let's set it up so you really just write a function in whatever language you have. And then languages define something called a build pack. And what the build pack does is it knows how to take a function in a language and turn it into a container.
Right.
And that's it. And then, and this is the wonderful layers of the world, right? So container itself is this beautiful abstraction for how you deploy code. And so it's just raising it up. So instead of thinking about, we used to have to worry about deploying our Linux machine and the version of Linux and make sure it has the patches. Like, hey, Docker gets rid of that. Now you have to worry about the language. Now it's even further. Like, forget about, setting up your server instance and listening on the right port and all that. Just define a function. And so that function can just be from a HTTP request to an HTTP response, async, right? Request to async response, fine. And then what we're doing in the function framework in Dart with all this crazy build stuff, so this gets back to JSON serializable because it's build based, is I've done a bunch of work to add layers here. So now I can say, instead of HTTP request response, I can say, oh, I take a cloud event as an object to my function, and I return a response. And what the framework will do is, one, when you run and deploy, I'll set up the server so that all the right handlers happen in place. So if anything comes across the wire that isn't a cloud event, it's a 400. You didn't send me the right cloud event. And so what you're handling is a valid cloud event object in your class. So you're not dealing with HTTP at all. I'm getting a cloud event input, and I can return a map of string to dynamic. I can return a class, like a customer class, and as long as the customer object has a toJSON function on it, we'll call toJSON on the customer class. We'll put it in an HTTP response with a 200. We'll set the content type as JSON, or application/JSON. We'll do that work for you because that's just boilerplate. So and then we can go even further, and this is stuff I want to get to next, which is I can say, oh, I have a function of type that takes in an order request and returns an order confirmation. So I write that code. And as long as order request has a from JSON, because we need to turn the things in the wire into that, and as long as order response has a toJSON, that's how we turn it into the response, we will take care of all the wiring. So checking the content headers, checking the request type, decoding it for you, encoding it for you. And that gets a little bit into the checked YAML, checked stuff in JSON serializable. So just create a query object that has, argument checking in the constructor. So it's like, oh, I require that the order number be a positive integer. I require that, whatever you check. Throw argument exceptions, and those argument exceptions will turn into, as detailed a 400 as you want to send to the user, and then nice logs in your cloud output. So you can see,
what you're describing there is what every server developer has to go through, which is just that boilerplate of sort of just getting code to work, right? I mean, like this is about dealing with the transaction at that point.
So I don't want to undersell function framework, but I actually. You get something working, and then you're like, okay, it's just like source gen. Source gen was all the stuff. It's like, no, you need to separate it into like 5 pieces. So function framework right now is a whole bunch of logic that, and I want to do more to figure out, okay, from type to type, turning into request response. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with function framework. That could just be any HTTP server you want to do should have that support. And then function framework is just an incantation of that, where the types are specific to this notion of function framework from Google and from the cloud community, cloud events. And so that's one incantation with one set of types that have specific semantics around what's expected in the request body and what's expected in the response.
I think there's, sorry, just thinking about that, the whole request, that what you're just talking about, the whole sort of request response of HTTP in general, right, is great. And just to make it's clear to our viewers, that also includes HTTP2, right? I mean, HTTP2 with multiple... and
HTTP3.
And it's 3 coming up, yeah, speedy, right? Like,
it's actually crazy because depending on the server, depending on the backends you use in Google Cloud now, and the browser you're using and things, I've written Dart stuff and deployed it, and like my Dart stuff's returning HTTP3 because it's all taken care of by the middleware, or the bits that run in the middle in Google Cloud. And so what I realized I didn't explain just really quickly is, so I need to be careful about what I talk about. In general terms, this notion that you have a general contract for eventing and you think about containers and these things is super nice, because now you think about Cloud Pub Sub. So this is the event arc thing that was just announced, I think, last month or two, which is how do we clean this all up? And so any notion of, there you go. So now I can route pub sub messages, and those have a well-defined type, and the type's not a Dart type or a C# type or a C++ or anything else. It's just, here's what the JSON looks like, or here's what the HTTP headers look like. I can now send these events to any backend that supports these events, and I can register for these events and listen for these events. And so if you want to wire up with Cloud Pub Sub now, I think that supported the event arc. And I think there's more things coming in this space. I have to leave it vague, but
yeah, I was going to say,
cool model.
Yeah, I noticed that just for anyone that's curious, if you go to the repository for the package, you've got raw cloud event JSON and hello for examples, which is really great, just to get people going.
Yeah, Tony did an amazing job here. So just click on lib as a great. Go to lib functions real quick in that repo.
And to just be clear to everyone, the lib functions is the normal name, and then you run build runner, and it generates a bin main Dart or bin server. Sorry, is it bin server.dart?
Well, so zoom in here just to show people.
Mhm.
And scroll down. So that's all you need to write. So here's a request and return OK. Like that's it. You don't.
This was so easy.
It's meant to be easy, and you
And
do annotate
the
it as
thing
a
is, you
function.
can also drop this into a Docker container, and then
yeah,
just
it's actually there. If
put
you
it
look at the
wherever you
root, it's
want.
right there. Yeah.
Sorry,
And so
yeah,
then
yeah.
in hello,
I've done
go
that.
to.
You can just copy this Docker file and it compiles the bin server.dart and produces a binary file that you ship. And that way, there's another key point. If you're doing server deployments, you're only ever shipping the one single compiled binary output of your Dart executed Dart code, right? So that's another great.
Yeah. So if you don't do the compile thing, because the Dart SDK has an analyzer and a formatter, and Dart.js has two JS compilers. It's about 700 megs. And so if you can do a Docker container that way, and you end up with a 700 meg Docker container, which takes a while to upload or might take a while to deploy, in Cloud Run. If you do the compile step, you end up with about 11 megabytes.
Yeah.
So it's super tiny. So we're actually, Tony, again, did some spectacular work there to get the, we've talked about this almost a year ago, but he did the work to kind of formalize it in a Docker thing. And I hope in the next month or two, we'll get that to official. So it'll just be one of the Docker things that we support.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll just be kind of one of the offerings that the Dart team gives you, is this easy model for how you compile your app. You compile your server app.
Well, and
then
once
you can
again,
handle functions,
we
which is great.
sorry. I was going to say, once again, we need to drag Robbie on the show probably because he's doing it again.
Open
functions framework compatible.
I have no idea what open fast
is. Is it that I have to Google that first?
I know that Google's been heavily into the standards body. There's a whole bunch of standards now. Like I think Kubernetes has become sort of like almost like a standard thing that is not just.
Oh yeah, there's the it's Open Container Initiative. That's the one I was
thinking of. Yeah.
No, but it's even bigger.
Open Cloud, I don't know. That's probably wrong. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff.
It's all standardized. And so this question from Robert was a couple things. So, one, this is, it's pre-release. It works great for what it does. It's a tiny thing. It supports the current function framework standard. We want to do a little cleanup before we call it a V1. But it's very easy to kind of inspect and see what it does. It does, the code implementation is a little complex, but the implementation is pretty tight, I think. Like it'll work fine if you want to just do servers in Dart. And you don't have to use the function framework at all to do this. It just creates nice little mini servers.
I'll answer
the question about. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say to that point, you don't have to use, to be clear to everyone, you can still release your Dart code and compile it using standard HTTP server and deploy that to Cloud Run, for example, or your engine.
And you could use this library that we created to create just an HTTP server. It's meant to be restricted. You could do as much as you want in it.
You put the shelf in there and away you go.
Yeah, it's just an HTTP server. The question about open function as a service, we haven't done any work specifically to support that. I don't actually know what the details are, but it's important to boil down all these things, right? Like this is a containerized application that spins up an HTTP server in a well-defined way. And so if you want to do a thing that fits those constraints, we'll probably party okay there. There's always obviously some work we probably could do to, if they have different environment variables they use or different whatever, like you need to support those things. But I love this world where like these big announcements about things that everyone agrees on, and they boil down to such simple little things, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like, it's not this big, arduous thing. It's JSON over HTTP following some conventions.
But what's funny is it takes 6 months to come to the defined standard that little bit of information, right? Just to go back.
And hopefully,
companies.
Because some clients can't change the HTTP headers, right? If you want to come from a browser and still support the thing, you need to support encoding it in JSON body. But there's things that could be considered there. So I'm glad, Grant is someone else who's helped us a bunch on this. He works on the function side at Google, and he's helped kind of keep us sane and focused there.
So go on, Scott.
I was going to say we're getting a couple of more interesting questions here. What is the persistent strategy for the framework?
Persistence.
I have no idea.
I'm guessing what this means is it meant to be like stateful or stateless? I'm guessing. Yeah. I'm guessing that they're not asking, are we planning on deleting the code or something, like with a project persist? So in general, for these things, they're meant to be stateless, which means, at least from my understanding, is you can have state, backing state, call out to cloud storage or data store or whatever else to store data and respond to data. That's of course fine. But the functions in general and in Cloud Run specifically, the general idea is there's no guarantee that between call 1 and call 2, even from the same client, you'll go to the same instance.
Right.
Like that is not an assumption. So there are cases where I will cache things. For instance, like I might have, if I know that I am doing calls back to a service, I might cache the HTTP client I use to call back to those services, an authenticated client, because that just makes things faster. So if you want to cache some things for efficiency, fine. But in theory, in general, especially my understanding for Cloud Run is you need to make sure that you don't know if the same client will talk between request 1 and request 2, even if they're within microseconds, will go to the same instance. So instances go down, they come up all the time.
There is, I believe, and I may be wrong, Google Cloud Load Balancer has a session type cookie header that it applies to the response, and you can do that, so you can ensure that there are more requests that come in go to the same instance.
Oh, that's great. And so those things are great, but again, my understanding is those are just sessions.
Yeah, exactly. It's outside of function frameworks anyway. It's not really, yeah.
So yeah, maybe you store a map with like session cookies, so you don't have to go request the same thing over and over. But even that, you want to be super careful that you have a max size so that it doesn't blow up, right? And I'm not a super expert on those things, so I'd recommend to read the friendly manual.
So, and that's a clarification right there. That's from the same person that the question was about. And yes, I know my camera's flickering. It didn't start till this stream, and I'll try to figure it out later.
Okay. Yeah, so I think, if you want to cache connections to backends and those types of things, that's completely fine. But you just can't assume that between calls it's the same user.
Yeah, as I say, the instance will get torn down when it's no longer being used based on your scaling strategy in the cloud setup. Right. So,
and regarding the open FAAS question, there might be somebody who can help us clarify that. Once again, we've yanked Robbie in here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you.
So what exactly did you mean?
I think I was working with Flutter something like 2 years ago, and there was that open standard that was called OpenFAS, and I was trying like hell to get Dart working on it. It was very simple. The idea was just you pipe the input and the output of the container, but I was completely stuck. But by digging into that, I said, oh, this is a very interesting solution. So my idea is I really love the GCP solution, but if you want to move your solution somewhere else, there's not much standard.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. And I love the container model, right? And I spent time on App Engine Classic before, and which was a cool solution, like scale to 0, don't pay for things, but you had to use these bespoke libraries or bespoke versions of things. And so migration was tough. And I really, again, I don't work on the cloud team
as well.
I don't work on the cloud team at all, but I like working with the folks on the cloud team. And their model here generally is like, no, Kubernetes will be open. The Knative story is going to be standardized. Like containers are the way you do things. And so you can, shift things other places. I run the container on my local machine and it works fine. So I'm super excited about that.
Okay, that's a good, very good solution, because I work as an architect, and sometimes you want to get stuff on public cloud, you see, with GCP, which is the best start. And then just some parts, you want to move them on private stuff like OpenShift or stuff like this. And if you want to stay with Dart, I think I'm going to invest a lot of time working with this solution. So thank you.
Awesome. Glad to hear.
Very cool.
And again, I need to
popping
on. Yeah, thank you, Robert. I should be clear to folks. I'm doing some work now to kind of just make it easier. I mean, if people have been watching me, I've done some stuff with Google APIs. I wanted to make it easier to use these things. I want to keep in mind that we are mostly, specifically for our team, we are bulk focused on client stuff. So Flutter, making sure that works really well. So you're not going to see some crazy server framework from our team. Probably, yeah. Don't learn zero plans. And usually we don't talk about plans, but like,
would it be confident?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, would it be confident to say that you would like some contribution from the community in some fashion?
Right. That's kind of where I was going here, right? Like Ruby was a language for a long time, and then DHH says like we should create Rails, and like my understanding is he wasn't on the Ruby team. He just thought I like Ruby and this is a thing. So I know there's some people in the ecosystem talking about this. I hope it's not selfish to say there's been some efforts here. We have tried to center on Shelf, and I think I had a conversation in Reddit about this briefly. I don't think Shelf is magic, but what we tried to do with it was be the most obvious thing, like just simple and obvious, and it's meant to be composable. And so if people are playing in this effort, if you have an idea better than Shelf, please let us know. Maybe we'll do something else. But it's like Rack or Express is the same thing in the Node ecosystem, right? Like, people want to boil the ocean here and build huge things, which I know is super compelling and interesting. But that means if it blows up, the whole thing blows up. And so if it's possible to make small things that compose together, I think we'll have a lot more success. Because there's a vacuum here, and we're not planning on filling. I want to do some work to make sure integrating with Google Cloud works well, authentication works well, that we have the basics on the server side that work well. We're doing work there. But there's a lot of work in the community here, and there's a lot of room for leadership. And all I ask folks is please don't, build 12 packages that all work really well together. Don't go build this giant monolith that's impossible to support.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's more about this communication. Reach out to other developers, right? Use their GitHub handles and tag them in issues and try and work together. This is just want to clarify. We've got Robin here. He said, "Is it possible to write a Dart cloud function?" That is exactly what we're talking about.
I can't really post a URL because I'm not. Yeah, like yes. If you go to that thing. If you have gcloud installed in your machine, you can go into the function framework repo, sync it down locally, go into examples JSON. Excuse me, and there's an incantation that's actually in the README. Tony did a spectacular job. It's basically copy and paste with your project ID and the region, and you have a running cloud function.
Nice.
It's super easy. In fact, I was actually kind of curious. I think that there's another step forward. I mean, I know like particularly cloud functions are considered stateless. I also think that there's a room, and this is maybe an idea for people to build a library around this, WebSockets or gRPC, something that's maintained state, full connection to a backend system. Because there's definitely times where, for example, Twitter, when you see when someone likes something, you can actually see the count update in front of your eyes, or on Stack Overflow, when someone makes a live comment, it pops through onto your screen. These are those interactions that happen over an open connection like a WebSocket, and I think that's a very powerful notion to definitely have alongside stateless cloud functions.
Hold on just one second. Google Cloud Run, whatever.
Google has released a notice about the fact that Cloud Run now supports WebSockets and gRPC.
Oh, here we go.
If you've got something you want to share, feel free.
Yeah, I do. I'll chat it to you, and you can do the magic here. So this was written by a gentleman that is he works at Google on Kubernetes and Cloud Run and a bunch of stuff. I've actually never met him, but this came across my desk. And so this is not about Dart. This is just Cloud Run and Redis. And so actually, this is an important thing to keep in mind when you think about Cloud Run. I think it's interesting. So that your Cloud Run instance can be up for a very long time. and it can handle many connections. I think this article discusses this. So it's not that these things are like, it spins up to execute the function, it spins down. Like, we want to be smarter than that. Like, keep it running for a while. And so what the solution that's discussed in this article, which again I think is a really cool solution, and as far as I know, there's nothing stopping anyone from building the exact same thing in Dart, other than just the effort. I think we support all the things you need. The idea here is you have a few servers deployed. These servers handle an insane amount of connections, and then they have a single connection to Redis, and the Redis is what holds the state of the world.
Nice.
And so that's where, again, none of these running Cloud Run instances have state. What they do is they're the proxy from all these HTTP connections to a single Redis thing, a single Redis connection. That's how you scale out here. And the scale numbers are just completely bonkers. And so, yeah, we had talked about doing some stuff in this space. Just, it's a cool demo to show. I haven't done it myself. I need to play with WebSockets and those things, but it should be in the realm of possible. But this is how you do something. It seems like it's a stateful thing, and there is state. Of course there's state, but the state is in Redis. And the Cloud Run instances, they will time out a connection after an hour, and your client just needs to be smart. So like, oh, the connection dropped, reconnect, and you might connect to a different instance, and that's fine.
And then it reuses the same state from the same token or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. So your Cloud Run instance still is completely stateless. It's up for a long time, but it's completely stateless.
I like it. Let's see if anyone has any questions. #Humpday Q&A. Please use the hashtag in the chat. We have a question.
Are those functions work in multiple isolates? What is the performance? Great question. So I forget what the default number is. Cloud Run has some default number of concurrent connections. I think it's 60 per instance.
You can change it.
You can. Yeah, that too. I think, in this case, in the Redis case, I think it's thousands per machine. Because again, it's more about the underlying network infrastructure. Like, how many open sockets can I have to a given network endpoint? The machine actually does very little work in those cases, or at least the Dart code does. The OS is doing most of the work, keeping the sockets.
I was going to say, I would be remiss if I didn't explain to people that if you do want to do that kind of thing, I don't know if you mentioned the article, you have a ephemeral port limitation. It's called ephemeral ports. You can go Google this. And it's basically when you run out of ports on an IP address. And Linux by default only allocates so many for you to use, and you have to do some configuration changes on your operating system to let it use more of all the 65,000 ports available per IP.
Interesting. Okay.
And so you can actually run out on the number of connections. And there's also, in Dart's case, ulimit. You have to change the file limit. That's because each connection to the network is considered a file on Linux. So you might run out of file limit on your machine as well. So these things you have to look into. But yeah, sorry.
These are that's fine. These are the
catch cases.
These are the places where I love. These are the bugs I love getting filed. I call them good problems to have. Right.
Right.
Oh, we need to add better caching to pub.dev because the request count is insane. Like, good problems to have are popular. So yeah, if you're at the point where you're building some crazy multi-user server and Dart is humming fine on your 2-core default instance, and you're running out of sockets or you're running out of file ports on Linux, those are good problems to have. If we're at that point where we have to go talk to the cloud team about changing defaults because the limiting factor is your number of open ports, that's a good problem to have. So multiple isolates, what's performance? It turns out responding to, depending on what you're doing in the background, right? If you're calculating huge numbers of Fibonacci sequences or other things, you might be hitting the CPU hard. In general, what we have found for these kind of applications is you're almost always network bound. Either you're bound by the connection speed of the user, or you're talking to some backend service and you're limited by how fast the backend service is. And so I don't think we've done any of the work to spin up multiple isolates and any of our server stuff. We do have support for that. And there's some work coming down the pike that's going to make a lot of that way easier and cooler. I don't want to talk about it necessarily, but if you've been looking at any of the SDK commits, there's some really exciting stuff happening in this space in Dart. But I'm not going to say anything. You have to go look at the source code, and otherwise just wait. So you can listen on HTTP to use multiple isolates, which is effectively it ends up allocating multiple threads or using multiple threads, but you don't think about it. You just have independent isolated kind of flows of control, and then the Dart VM handles how many threads, and creates a thread pool to manage things. Actually, this is. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, there's been a lot of talk around the fact that spin up of islets is very expensive, right? And it can be slow. And I just wanted to just mention that if no one saw this during Flutter Engage, one of the Flutter Engage community talks by Maxim Lin talks about the new change of grouping isolates and doing those featherweight isolates. He's been working with the people in the Dart team to improve that. So I'll post that in the video for everyone to see.
Oh, good. Well, I guess that's what I would talk about. Martin, who I worked with way back when I started on cloud stuff, is actually now he's like insane, crazy VM engineer doing this like lightweight isolate stuff, which is it's not quite where like a Go routine is, but that's a way to think about it. Where in Go, you could spit, each isolate in Dart right now, and I hope I get this right, is effectively like a full copy of the whole stack. It has its own garbage collector heap. Classes are instantiated again. And there's good reasons for that. Like it really is isolated in the strict notion of isolate, which is good for stability and a bunch of other crazy stuff. But it's also expensive. And so there is work, this featherweight isolate, or lightweight isolate model. And the idea there is, share the heap and the garbage collector and and all the class definitions. Just give me independent flows of execution. And of course that means insane things, right? Because if you're instantiating a new class and there's like hash this stuff in the VM. So for the first time I instantiate list of my weird class, there is some logic in the VM. It's like, let's create the native code for that and create it once, right? Because you don't, then compile it once. But now it's like, I have 50 threads running. Which one is going to instantiate that class first? And then how do you coordinate between them so that only one instance is created, and if I pass that class from one isolate to another in certain ways, that it's the same class in like a binary native,
I never even thought about that. Yeah, I know. I never even thought about that just now. I just realized that there's a problem. There's not a problem. I'm asking. There's an issue with the fact that the Dart team have to think about JIT and AOT, right? So it's not just from a language and from a like the VM perspective, if you will, the environment. They have to think about both modes of execution, which obviously doubles probably or more the amount of work and effort that has to go into these things.
What's my you should really have, just add this to your list of people to bring on. Slava, we call him. I can't pronounce his actual name. We just call him Slava. Yeah. But he's hilarious and awesome. You should have him on to talk about this stuff. Because my understanding is we actually share a lot of that code. Like we have that compiler. And in some cases, we run the compiler incrementally and just in time. And other times, you run the whole thing. And obviously, the way we think about running that whole compiler, we do it differently in the two contexts. But I don't, the logic that turns a for loop into optimized ARM code, I don't think we have two copies of that. We might have,
one
sprinkled in different logic in terms of optimize, de-optimize, and stuff I don't know nearly enough about. It's kind of amazing. That's why I like coming to talk to you folks, because you ask me questions where I I know the answer to this stuff. And, in the Dart team, I'm just, I'm a lonely guy with a bachelor's degree among a bunch of people with PhDs.
I'm gonna pose a couple of questions while we wait for some more to come in.
Okay.
I'll just take one here and we'll do it in turns. While we were talking earlier, I remembered that someone asked me, why do we have the required keyword anymore with null safe? Because if it's not nullable, then it has to be passed in, and therefore
it's required.
It's required. So the at has gone from the annotation, right? But the required keyword is part of the language, and I think there's been a lot. There's been a lot of confusion around. I still have to specify required, even though because it's non-nullable, it has to be given. Therefore, it's implied to be required. And I think people are kind of curious about how.
So here's the thing. I'm sure this is one of those things too, that it could have gone in either way, and think about consistency. Obviously you'd have a case where you could have a nullable argument that you still want to be required for whatever reason. Like maybe, and so just because you're nullable doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to be required. And so then the question is, do you do the work how explicit are you in the API? And I think, if you think about API docs and other things, I'm generally, it's one of those things like, if the error always goes in one direction, does that mean it should just be implied, right? Like, can we do a required inference, I think, is maybe the issue of the question. And you could. There are some cases, I think, like this, especially when you think about the definition of a type, where having it be explicit is nice. But yeah, I could see that going either way. But there are cases where you still need a required keyword, even for a nullable variable. And so you might want to still have required keyword.
I think a perfect example of that might be a user object for Firebase, because typically it sends back null if the user's logged out. So, but you also want to be absolutely sure whether or not you have a user. So we want to require.
So you could have a function that says, current, give me the current user. I mean, if it's only one argument, you wonder if you really want named there, but whatever. Yeah, but if you want to have a named argument, and still require it be provided, and even though it's nullable, I mean, that's why. Yeah.
So that was one off my list, because I would be remiss from these people that have been begging me for an answer behind something. I don't know. Kevin's the person who knows these things. I'm
scared now.
No. Indexed iteration. I think there's been a lot of love in the community around this idea of benefiting from the way that you might iterate over a map, and a lot of people want to know the index at which they're iterating over, or a for loop. And a lot of the inbuilt for capturing things is not index. You never get an index, and I feel like that one of the things that Go has, which gives you the optional index for every iteration. And I think there's some extension methods and some things that people have been working on. I think .x or .z, I can't remember which one has some provisions for this. I mean, what are your thoughts about bringing something like that to the language? Is that possible, or is this again one of those things where you don't want to be breaking something that's existing? Because I do like the idea.
Okay.
Go for it.
Oh, I should wait. Okay, I'm scared. Share the screen. They should put the share button right next to the. Actually, this is all good. This is another thing to bring up. So let me resize it a little bit. So package collection is where you're putting a bunch of these fun things.
So I want to be clear. About this, because this was one of my other questions. Dart collection and package collection are two totally different things. And I think there's a few of these cases where there's an async package and there's Dart async, and these are two separate things.
And convert and IO.
And
we're getting dangerously close to my talk about the flex is not the flex.
So but indexed for each indexed.
There we go.
There you go. And it's extension and iterable.
Here's a quick question.
The collection
how does this?
They have to add collection to their pub spec to get this.
Package collection. Yes.
Yes. So in their pub spec they add collection : and then whatever the version is from pub.dev, just like with any package.
And the other thing here too, and the other thing that I hit constantly, so I'm sure a lot of people in the community have too, is first where or null.
Yeah.
This. Because what people have done is you do .first where of something, parentheses, arrow, null. And you get an error because first it returns T, and the T type, if it's just integer in list of ints, null is not an int, right? It's int ? And so people are doing my list of integers .cast to int ? Where, first where. But now what you do is use this guy, and this says, get the first one, and it turns T into T ?
Right.
So anyone who's written that code, and I'm sure there's at least a few people on the chat, I would love to know how many people hit this already too.
There's also that one where you do those things, and because you get the what's the error? Item not available. Was it called element error? No element error. I think it is that you get when you try and search for something that doesn't exist unaware.
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay.
I think it's single where or first where we'll throw an exception if the item doesn't exist that you're looking for, and so you have to add the or else, and then a lot of the time I remember doing this previously, or else, and then adding a function that returns null. So it's like essentially saying if you can't find it, don't throw an error, return null, and this is the replacement of that. Yeah.
Bouncing back to Cloud Functions real quick for a moment. There was an interesting question about debugging.
Can we connect a debugger to those functions? Great question. The first thing I would say is, run locally if you can. And actually, I've been super impressed that there's a cloud plugin for IntelliJ and VS Code that lets you spin up your containers as though it's in a Cloud Run instance locally, and they set up a bunch of environment stuff for you. So I would highly recommend, if you're using VS Code or IntelliJ, go get the Google Cloud plugin for those. And again, it's just Docker. The trick is, one of my selfish reasons, I want the community to dig in here more, because the more noise we make about Dart on the cloud, the more support we can get from the cloud folks. Because I want the cloud debugger, for instance, and the cloud stack trace, there's a bunch of stuff there. I would love Dart support in those things. But all these people are insanely busy, of course. They're doing a bunch of great work that we're leveraging. And so for them, they're product managers just like me on those teams, trying to prioritize their work for next quarter. And so just me coming in saying, it'd be cool if cloud supported Dart in, the stack trace is tough. But I had, 500 users and these huge clients coming in saying, we want to use Google Cloud here, but we're blocked by XYZ. We want this thing. That is the evidence I need. So, and again, this is no shade at all to the cloud team. They're just like me. We all have our pet features and things we want to work on, but we need to prioritize and make sure customers. And so the more people that are using Dart in the cloud, the more ammo I have to go and push for support for these things. So a lot of the short answer is I do a lot of printf debugging when I deploy. Thankfully, cloud run deployments are pretty fast. Hopefully we can get them faster. I'm pushing on some stuff there. There is some stuff in the function framework that I just need to make more. This is where I talk about decomposing. There's some stuff I put in there that I just need to pull out that just generally helps with logging. If you're just another Inside Baseball kind of thing. And when I say Inside Baseball, there used to be a show called Inside Baseball, which is all this nitty gritty. Again, for those that don't know, it's like crazy behind the scenes details.
This is what we want to know.
Yeah, if you print
behind the curtain,
if you print a single line on Cloud Run, I think anything, App Engine, Google Cloud, GCE, whatever. If you print a correctly formatted line of JSON, so you can't multi-line it, a single line of JSON, and it has the right things, it will turn magically into a beautiful log entry in your Cloud Logger. And so, there is an API to go call to log things. But now you're doing an RPC every time you want to log. Printing is easy. And so in the function framework, there is some logic where if you do logging, you can do severity of things, include error information, and I'll actually you can put, if there's an exception, it'll put the line of code and the file and the offset, the line number. And so that can make things easier there. I know people have done work, and we've done work, so that if you open up the right ports, you can talk to Observatory running in the cloud, at least for Google Cloud Engine. You just need to open the Observatory port. And again, that can get scary. And so if people have used Observatory lately, you'll know that it has this crazy tag at the end of the URI. That's why. So I can't just go guess ports and connect Observatory. I need kind of this fun time.
Security risk there, right?
Yeah, so I be very careful here, folks. I'm not. I would be surprised. I don't think Cloud Run I can connect to more than one port.
You could. The key thing is though that you could expose that port in your container's Docker configuration, and then locally debug on your machine. You can do attach, can't you? And then just give it the port number. Right,
but I don't think Cloud Run. I don't think gives you the mechanism to here's a run instance. Oh, and another port that's gonna I don't think that exists.
No. I'm just mean on your local machine. You can definitely
locally, absolutely, yeah.
And then start up the Dart dev tools for Observatory and sort of little side thing. Yeah, you've worked on another package I've used for cloud. This is one of yours, isn't it? Or it relates to you in some fashion.
Well, you know what's hilarious about this? I worked on this before I worked at Google, when it was 80 separate packages, and then it was sucked into the cloud, into the Dart team 6 years ago. Seriously, And now I've come back to it to try to help clean it up and make it better. And yeah.
Yeah, there's just so many of the Dart API. So many of the Google APIs in here, and when you've sort of got one, then there's a bunch of interfaces. And the key one, just to mention to everyone, if you're looking, it's under API, and then that's where you connect your HTTP client, and then it starts using the API, and then from there you can find your resources for whatever it is.
Actually, humor me really quickly. Just click on Blogger v3 at the very top of your screen.
Yep.
There. So scroll to the top now. This was one of the things I tried to make better. So now every one of these pages, I link to the docs, and then I say this is the class to go create the root, and then there's all the things it exposes. So actually, go to compute. Compute is bananas.
I can imagine. In fact, I saw the one for deploying cloud functions in here, which I was also playing around with. I was thinking, I could script Dart code to deploy cloud functions. Oh, this is fun.
Or just run the command line. I mean, you could, but
where's sorry, compute.
I can already hear the chat saying, "Post the link, Simon."
Okay, I'll post the link. I'll post a link to this thing. You get whatever I was looking at. Good luck.
There you go. There's all the resources in compute.
Right, disks, VMs, instances, nodes, networks, regions. You name it, they got it. So, but this is interesting, right? Because this, for me, the power behind the Google APIs and seeing this infrastructure is this really opens up the world to doing Dart on the server side. So if you want to build up a business around deploying cloud infrastructure, taking some sort of, some definition of some deployment, and just, for example, compute, deploying it to Google Cloud Compute with one button press on a web interface, bam, here's the API for that, you've got it, right? There's so much in here. And then there's also a beta one as well, which I think holds the...
Doesn't have as much... There's like 24 in there. I need to stop maintaining that because there's some interesting stuff there, but it's, yeah. So I really classify these APIs in two sets, and unfortunately they're not defined. There's no automatic way for me to segment them. But there's basically people-focused, user-focused, and kind of cloud infrastructure-focused.
Yeah.
And so in this, you will see, Drive, you'll see Docs, Sheets, Slides, you will see Gmail, they say calendar already, you'll see tasks, you'll see YouTube,
so
and even YouTube is a bunch.
Yeah, you could automate a lot.
Yeah, like if you wanted a service where it's like, let me access the user's favorite YouTube videos because I want to share YouTube videos or something. If you want to, I wrote this app actually as a console app. You run an app that I want to walk through the user's inbox. I want to search for all emails that have the word unsubscribe in them. Then I'm going to take all the from addresses and concatenate them into a map with a counter. Because you go and you click the unsubscribe button on an email, and that's fine. But I still have like 300 emails in my inbox from them over the last 3 years. And so it's like, let me find the offenders. So just playing with that is like super easy. Contacts, it's like, I want to make an app to clean up my contacts or to create, just as a lone developer doing something, a little hacky thing. It's like
where products start though, right? Like the lone developer comes up with something he wants and then realizes, actually, this could be a product. This could be something. Mm-hmm. And just to make everyone aware, there's this package, Google APIs Auth, and that contains all of the little niggly things that you need to do if you want to use your own personal account to authorize these APIs, for example, your own Google Sheets, or use service accounts and all this kind of stuff. Go on.
You can use, so if you're a Flutter app developer, there's a Google sign-in package, and then there's a Google sign-in extensions package that are both by the Flutter team. So Google sign-in will let you do a Google sign-in, and you can set the scopes and everything else. And then if you use the Google sign-in, I think it's extensions package, and we're going to try to make this a little bit cleaner. That will say, give me the sign-in object and create a client for me. So then you don't even have to use the Google Auth package. We do it all for you.
I found the name of the package. I think you were slightly wrong. It's extension Google sign-in as Google APIs Auth. Is that the one?
I did not name this. I'm sure whoever did had very good reasons, but that's the package.
They were studying.
This is the perfect time to point out, okay, that Flutter Enhancement Suite is a package that you can get for IntelliJ. It will do autocomplete in your PubSpec YAML file. Okay, it can save you at a time like this.
I think I might be wrong, but I think the latest version of the Flutter plugin now does lookups for packages or versions for you,
or at least remember some common ones. I think
something like that. Yeah, it does some interesting ones for sure. But okay, so that's the thing that kind of links the Google sign-in with Google APIs auth, which with Google APIs, the glue, that package we were just talking about. Sorry,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I am going to exchange myself here for a moment with Randall, and I will be back in just a bit. So, hi, Randall.
Hi, Randall. Welcome.
It's good to
Bye,
be
Randall.
I'm definitely concerned. Kevin, if you're running out of time, please don't hesitate to let us know. I don't want to have you missing a meeting. This is just now going to talk. And I think I'm going to open the board up again. Questions. I'm going to look at the YouTube chat. So if you have any questions, please post them, and I'll see what we get to.
I have a plug I could do real quick. Let me post the link to our other chat. We just launched V1 of the setup actions for Dart. So it's now Dart team supported actions for installing Dart and GitHub. I don't want to throw shade on any company, and everyone's trying to make money, I realize, but I know I spent a insane amount of time dealing with Travis, and then Travis is kind of for legitimate whatever business reasons has decided supporting the open source community is expensive. A lot of folks are moving to GitHub. We've actually been very happy with GitHub, with GitHub Actions, and we've almost moved everything over there. So we now have an official in the marketplace action for Dart. It's funny, Tim Sneath, my boss, immediately after he saw this, he's like, aren't people going to want Flutter next? And we're like, oh yeah, probably. So so Michael did a bunch of Bash scripting magic, which I do not envy him for, because Bash is my least favorite thing to, oh my gosh. But check that out. And we've I'll
post the link in the chat.
Most of our packages have moved to that. So check that out.
Awesome.
If you want to do a quick look in the chat quick to see if there's any more questions I can help with, but then I probably should get on to I could do this on. So again, it's fun to come on and I can answer questions and feel smart, which is a great shift from my normal day.
And before you leave, I just checked your name out in Pub. It's 74 packages that have your email associated with them. I think that's a record. I think that's the highest number I've ever seen for that.
What's funny is those are packages that we have yet to move to publishers. There's a bunch we're to move to publishers. But again, I need to be super clear. Like, I have a publisher on Analyzer and all the build packages. I have done such tiny or no work on those. We have brilliant engineers that do most of that work. There are things that I can take credit and blame for. Like JSON serializable, I deserve most of the credit and blame.
Yes.
The function framework, I did a lot of that implementation with some, and again with really strong contributors. But I'm just lucky to be the guy who's like, if no one else is going to publish it, I'm going to publish it.
Nothing wrong with that.
But I'm happy to help. So there's nothing else biting. I'll let you look quick. And
no, thank you for coming on, and thank you. Honestly, thank you for coming on and answering all our questions, putting up with us.
Oh, it was a blast. Thank you guys so much. I'm happy to do
Always
it.
love chatting
again.
And we'll expect to see some cloud function stuff coming soon. Some more things.
Oh yeah, there's so much more. Yes.
If only I had another hour in the day.
Thanks very much.
All this stuff. Bye, Kevin.
Bye.
Ciao, folks.
Cool. So, have we found any other questions?
I have a Robert in my ear. Robert?
Yes.
Robert, you on the street? Yeah.
I'm totally in love with the subject today. I mean, that's really, it opened a lot of doors.
Yeah, I've actually been playing around with the cloud function stuff, and I've actually built a chat server just as a quick play around to see if it works. And I was already like, this is brilliant. I need this in my life. And in fact, someone asked earlier about Flutter Web, and what I did was I made a Flutter Web client, took the build result, put that in a sort of a public folder for the web server to deploy that as part of my Docker container, and then when you go to the website on Cloud Run, it will display the Flutter web product, and that connects via WebSocket to itself on the server.
Wow.
So basically, you have a self-deployable Flutter web / Dart server side all in one, which is very
awesome,
ambitious. It's just me playing around. There's no form to this code, but I will post a link in the chat for anyone that's interested.
I keep thinking with all this advancement in serverless cloud functions that why do I even have machines in the sky now that have a prompt? It's like it's just the wrong way to go for most things these days.
Yeah, you're talking about sort of like a server that you can log into and have a SSH terminal.
Yeah.
I think that there's, as long as you've got good logging, normally that's the thing. But there's definitely a reason. So, for example, when I first deployed the chat server one there, I found some niggling errors with something. So I ended up, I think I did it in the Docker file on there, where it adds. You know what? Might as well click on it and see. There's what's the toolkit called? BusyBox. You guys heard of BusyBox?
That's the Linux thing that makes a tiny install.
The one tool that has ls, cd, all the shell sort of commands all in one app. So what I did was this literally deploys a Scratch container. This Cloud Chat one deploys a Scratch container with one Dart binary and BusyBox, and that's it. But it means I can log in and see the state of the file system. So, or you know, if it dropped a file, or if other directories have the right permissions, that kind of thing. So there's kind of like, there is a level of sort of admin / debugging / dev that you need to do at the very beginning. But once it's working, it should continue to work. And as you say, and because it is a deployable, you know, static thing, right? You deploy it for a version, you know, out it goes. But yeah, no, fun times. It's definitely worth exploring further.
Questions.
Do we have any questions? Feel free to ask your questions, chaps. Otherwise,
yes,
you know, we'll end up ending early. There's no more questions.
Well, it's like right on time right now.
Yeah, it's getting there. We got 5 minutes normally.
Yeah,
we try and keep it within that barrier.
Yeah.
You're most welcome, John. Thank you. And don't forget to subscribe to Randall's channel here. He's been doing lots of interesting videos. And the Flutter community channel, where we try and publish lots of stuff from around the community as a whole.
Right. I'm going to actually start writing Medium articles so I can get those in the queue. I'm just so happy we're making screencasts that are solving a common question that comes up. That's where I find my source material, as I go through all these, 15 or 20 different places that I run normally. And Simon never knows how I do that. Yes.
Are you posting your own questions?
Yeah, because I'm really serious about that, because you need to use WebSocket when you are really building some complex system information. WebSocket is very, very complex, and you should use it only on video game or really real-time stuff. You can use server-side events, which is completely HTML. You don't have a parallel server with other thread. And
sorry, you're talking about server-side events when they send back, was it the long whole socket kind of deal, and sends back the extra header?
Yeah, server-side events is the cheapest and the simplest way to do real-time events from the server. And also, it's on the protocol. When you use WebSocket, you need a much more complicated stack. And my question is, can I use server-side events with Flutter or any Dart application?
Yes. In short, yes.
And
go on.
No, you can't.
No, you can't.
No.
Really?
Yeah, it seems I opened the bugs like 2 weeks ago because I want to use SSL with Flutter and not WebSocket, and it seems you can't.
For what? So
because it needs the HTML package, not the Flutter one. Looks you can.
No. Sorry. From a client perspective, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm talking about from a server perspective. You can.
From the servers, okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So you can still send the long poll results for for the server-side events. It's a text event stream is the protocol. I'm just going to see if I can bring it up for everyone. There's actually a standard protocol for it, and I can't find the documentation. I'm sure it's around somewhere. But yeah, you send back. It's like there it is. There it is. Hang on a minute. Hang on. I have it here. I'll put a link in the chat for anyone that's interested. From the server side, I'll bring this up on stream as well, and I'll make it bigger. Yeah. So from the server side, you just send back a response that has where is it? Text event stream MIME type, and then the body is actually just text, and you send this kind of body back. So it's data and then the data field, and it is each line that you send back is an event, right? So that's 3 events right there, right? And then you can have named events. So you name the events, in this case, a user connect, and you pass the data, JSON data back. But this is super easy for you to interpret in a Flutter web app. Like you could just open with the HTTP client library, and you could pass this. And then basically the browser support does this for you, right? So it's definitely plausible, should we say.
Great.
There's definitely a lot of ways of doing this. There's been issue though around like having connection. Like there's always been a long-term problem in my eyes, and that is on a mobile cell, if you're holding a connection open, right? Then you're holding your cell, the cell connection open for a long period of time. That's not normally a bad thing, but for example, push. Most people don't realize push works in that similar way. It has a special type of network connection, which is no delay and a few other sort of fancy parameters, which means that you keep the network connection open even when there's no traffic, right? Otherwise, if you don't send traffic, that's why a lot of these like server-side events have a ping to keep the connection going. Because if the connection isn't going, it'll be terminated somewhere, maybe along the between you and the final destination of the cell network. So someone might say, "Oh no, this connection no longer, it's timed out, it's no longer working," and just kill it. So yeah, the heartbeat is another name given to that ping pong kind of keeping the connection open. But that does consume your battery. That's another point, right? So use it sparingly. Sorry, go on, Robert.
I think that's an open question, because we see a lot of JavaScript framework moving in this way when you have much more live events with your application, and that's good. We have all the solution with that.
Well, I say here, Stefan, thank you very much. Randall, it's so nice to have your videos up online and
yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we do have a question from the chat. Thank you for this. Loved your video about RiverPod. I've done a couple now, trying to do a few more as I keep figuring out more about it. Can you make a video about hooks? Yes, I really actually mostly program only in hooks, which is sort of interesting. I almost could throw out most of the rest. But RiverPod hooks, Flutter hooks puts it together to actually make it tie into the RiverPod stuff. There's 3 or 4 great series already on all the different kinds of providers and how to decide one versus the other. My favorites are, I was just Googling for them. Hopefully I found the important ones that I was interested in. RezoCoder did a great bit on it. Andrea did a wonderful series on, or at least one episode on it. Tadas has done a couple of really, really nice things on that. RezoCoder said that he's going to actually follow up on the one he did, because it was just everything but the hooks. It was just the core stuff without hooks. And he promises that he's going to come out with one that's about the hooks. So that's why I'm hesitant to do one of those, because the stuff he did was brilliant. So go check those out. Those are really highly recommended. I must be subscribed to about 60 different Flutter chat channel or YouTube channel. So sometimes I have no idea where I saw something, but there's a lot of really great content out there. I think I'm now pulling up something like 6 or 7 videos a day that I have to sit through and watch. I'm not sit through. It's nice stuff, but it helps me understand where the Flutter as a whole is headed, and also helps me find places where I can make corrections, which is always fun. but I learn a lot from doing all this stuff and from learning from other people. And so I appreciate that people are doing that out there. So yes, I'm not going to do anything specific on hooks just yet. I'm going to wait and see what ResetCoder does. But I'll probably have other things. In fact, I'm going to do a screencast probably this afternoon or tomorrow. I made a wonderful web page that my brother is retiring from school in about 4 months. And so I put a countdown counter and I put stars along the background, and it runs fine. Desktop, web, everything. The animation is perfectly smooth, and it counts down, days, hours, minutes, and seconds. And I even use things like in a list constructor, you can have ifs. So I use that to drop out parts of the expression that don't make any sense. Like I don't want to say 0 minutes. I just want that to be completely gone. And it was so easy to do that. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of this code.
Nice.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
We have another question. Was cool. Dart for Firebase functions discussed today? I missed the first part, or is this completely unrelated with Google Cloud Functions? So let me be clear. Firebase functions and Google Cloud Functions are two different things. Firebase functions is built on top of Google Cloud Functions, and there's a limited set of languages that you can use. Dart is not one of them yet. But the first step in getting Dart in towards that direction of Firebase functions is getting it to work on cloud functions, and that's what we have today. So the functions framework, which I'll bring up the package for on the screen, if I find it, this one, pub.dev/packages/functions_framework, allows you to build Google Cloud Functions deployed in like Cloud Run or with the Cloud Functions directly, or there's a list on the package front page with all the different options, Kubernetes and all sorts of fun things, unless you're deployed there, but not Firebase functions yet, to be clear. So we're getting there, and if you go back, you can listen all about the stuff we talk about. We show it a bit of code and a few things. It's mainly been conversational because we know that you want to go away and go get the package and experiment yourselves. So us showing you, we press compile, it runs, and you see it working, and it says "Hello World" is not very helpful to show on stream. So yeah, go try it yourselves. Honestly, you'll really love it. Okay, I think. Did I miss anything? I think. Oh, hang on a minute. What do we call the standard Flutter architecture? Where's the logic in the view or controller? I need to work on
no standard.
There is no standard. Doesn't need to be a standard. We have stateful and stateless widgets, and you can invent it yourself. But the idea about Flutter is it's very much they don't enforce any sort of, you have to have your assets this way, you have to have your resources this way, you have to do things a certain prescribed way. It's not a framework in that sense, right? It's not like Vue.js or AngularJS or one of these things where it gives you a prescribed manner of doing something. It's taking a different approach to that. So yeah, you can use MVC, MVI, all these lovely things. There's lots of patterns. Go experiment, Redux, whatever. It's your choice, but there's not one that is prescribed by the Flutter architecture itself.
The strongest prescription is how you format your code.
Yeah.
That's probably the most locked in thing. Yes. So
the next time I get this question, I think I'm going to say Roman, not Greek, Roman architecture.
Oh yeah. Yes.
We haven't had much in the way of general Flutter questions, and we're going to take the last one before we call it in today. How to wake up an app from the background even when the phone is locked and show a phone call like screen, or also overdraw over other apps if the phone is locked. So what you're asking is not a Flutter. The reason why you can't find this is because it's not a Flutter question. What you're asking for is an Android or an iOS question. Those two things are to do with the operating system. And you can perfectly do them with Flutter. So I've seen it done recently where someone was receiving a push notification to indicate a phone call coming in, and then they present a new activity that has Flutter in it that shows the UI for the phone call. You can totally do that.
See, and this goes back also to the thing that I always say about it's not just important to know what Flutter is, but it's also very important to know what it's not. Okay, the difference is Flutter is a UI toolkit. It is not an operating system. Flutter doesn't access the Bluetooth directly because the Bluetooth is hardware. It doesn't access the IMU or the GPS. Those are hardware. It's not supposed to access those directly. That's the job of the operating system. So what you're talking about is doing something overriding when the phone is locked. Flutter is a UI toolkit. It draws to the screen and plays sounds. Okay, it's very much like Clash of Clans or Lily's Garden, all these other games. And the thing is that it does so many other things on top of what you would expect from a UI toolkit that people begin to forget that it is a UI toolkit. Like we can write our backend code in Dart without any problem. All of our backend logic in Dart. You don't expect that from a UI toolkit.
But that's not Flutter, right? That's Dart, right?
Right. That's true. That's Dart. But Flutter is the framework for displaying a container, displaying a gradient, an image, the text. If you want to start reaching out to do things like that, you're going to have to reach out to the operating system. And for those on Reddit, when you see somebody say that Flutter sucks because it can't access the camera natively, point out to them that Android sucks because it doesn't fold my laundry. They're both not true. I mean, it's not supposed to fold my laundry. Flutter's not supposed to access the camera. So,
but one of the big advantages though of the design is that you can have Flutter be a very powerful toolkit for moving pixels around. It's really, really, really good at it. But more than that, there are nice platform channels so that you can reach everything on Android that you can get to from Java. And you can reach everything on iOS that you can get to from Objective-C.
Or Swift.
Or Swift, yeah, right. Whatever languages are there. I don't program in those. I don't really care about those. Other people do, thank God.
Oh, man, now you just made a lot of people mad.
No, I make people mad.
It's like Hadi Hariri stood up, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something, and then the next words out of his mouth were, "Now that I've pissed all the Mac people off."
Yeah,
but,
it's not about that. It's my choice. I was
just about to bring that up. So
yeah. So this is previous on our previous question about MVC. What do we call this? So logic.
We call it a mess. Because you see, when I get stuck on something, I have Simon review my code, and if I really want to make his face tick, what I'll do before I'll hand it to him is I'll put a bunch of logic in my UI, in my widgets, and then we'll watch his eye starts to twitch a little bit.
Right.
Okay, Simon, go ahead and tell them why.
I was gonna say, there might be the logic can exist in both widget, so which is, I mean, essentially build is logic, right? But we very particularly talk about that as being UI build logic, right? And then we also have controllers. So like think text editing controller or one of these other things. And that mechanism of having a controller is somewhere where you can hold state that is independent of the widget hierarchy, right? So you can have your text editing controller somewhere else altogether if you wanted to. So it's just a different approach to develop. I don't think there's I wouldn't call this a particular pattern, but there's no reason why you can't put presenters in and model views, view models and all this kind of stuff. So
you will discover when you're putting things in the wrong place when you start writing 100% test coverage.
Yeah.
That will automatically reveal all the places. Well, I can't get in between this thing and this thing because they're glued together. They depend on each other. Yeah, that's why you need to be able. That's why people should be writing tests, because it helps make their code work better overall. And the
other thing I was going to say too is, I mean, Redux wants all of the state in one place, which a lot of times is overkill. But at the same time, if you've got state and logic in build methods all over the place, now it becomes the spider web. Mm-hmm. And it's a mess. So it's almost like, I mean, for me personally, I keep all my logic either in models or in.
I have to. I'm going to converse that point just for a second and say, look, if I'm building, let's say, a checkbox, and I want to keep the state of if it's checked or not, I'm going to have the state of a boolean in the widget, right? In the widget, if it wanted to maintain its own state. However, that boolean, the actual state of that checkbox, can be stored elsewhere if you wanted to, in a controller, in a global state, in a singleton, who knows where. That's your choice. But there's a decision to be made when you're building your Flutter apps where there's a certain amount of logic that is self-contained within the widget that is to be about the display of the widget. And for me, that stays with the widget. And you can test a widget, right? So you can test certain inputs, produce certain outputs, and so on. That's something that's completely testable. Mm-hmm. And you don't have the. And here's the thing that a lot of people, well, the good thing and the bad thing. The good thing that you can do that and you can test widgets. No other platform has made it so simple and easy to test widgets, right? And you can even test them without any device connected, no emulator, and anything like that, because it's all independent of the operating system. However, then you've got the that problem where people start putting all of their logic of their app in the widgets, right? Which is very much what happened in the very early Android days, where everyone put all their logic in the activities and these mammoth classes that did all this sort of work. So it really is about just good programming and good respect of separation of concerns, clean code, all this kind of. There's lots of things out there, but
just think of all that spaghetti code that people have written in PHP over the years.
Yeah,
we don't want to do that with Flutter, please.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that the idea there is pull out any. If your logic depends on the Flutter UI, then it needs to be related to the UI, right? The UI toolkit itself. But if your logic just could depend independently, can be run independently of the UI, pull it out, right? That's the difference.
And don't forget also with the new integration test package, you can actually run these tests right on a device.
Oh yeah, that's the other.
Or in the cloud on devices. So this
which
is
really
good
for two things. That means that you can then do. Now you can do it with the can't remember, the Cloud Test, I think it's called, the Firebase Test Lab, I think it is, I can't remember. But it means that you can run your app against those and get back screenshots of all these different devices, logs of all these different devices, videos from all these different devices, and gather all the information before you go to launch. Very powerful. And the other one, of course, it means you can do end-to-end tests with your backend, which is another very powerful.
Yeah. Well, last month, for a client, I was working on this application, and there was no test. And at the same time, like everyone, I discovered the integration test. And what I find really interesting after 2 weeks of intense work on this is that now I nearly start all my application with integration tests. And even more, I made a lot of progress because you need to refactor and make a different model when working with integration tests to make your widget and application fully testable.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of personal progress in using Flutter by starting with integration tests. And just a second point, for the business part of the company, it was important reassurance to see the app working from the beginning to the end in automated way. So invest a lot of time in this because you're going to make some points.
I think right there has the workings of a great talk and video. The next time you'll be presenting this, I'm sure.
There you go.
So I think we have an opening on April 7th, Robbie.
Yeah. Come back and present it to us if you want.
I think my prediction, that's my prediction. In 1 year, you will see some, for big company, developer that specialize in integration test for Flutter for big app.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Developer and test, specifically for Flutter and Dart. Mm-hmm. Right. Let's call it here because we're going to keep going and keep talking. I'm sure lots of people have dinners to eat and or lunches to have. So
lunch.
And dogs to empty.
Right.
Yes.
So thank you all for coming and watching our stream, and we hope you liked it. Bye for now.
See y'all next week.
See you everyone. Bye.
See you next week.